Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It's myself, George, joined by Neel for a very special review. This is, of course, the Steven Spielberg Retrospective, and we've now reached the 7th episode of the series, and we have reached E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, one of the biggest films of all time, and one that there's going to be quite a story, I think, to speak about with this. I'm also going to add, at the time of recording, it's had a giant 40th anniversary screening in America in the last week, which I just thought was purely coincidental. This wasn't strategized, and I managed to get some juicy bits of gossip off reading the news and everything they're saying. But before we get into all that, Neel, how are we doing tonight?
Not bad, not bad. Looking forward to talking about the world's favorite little guy. Not Grogu.
Not the Yoda. No. Yeah, well, yeah, Grogu. But there are references, and we'll get to bring them up. But no, I'm excited to get you back on it. It's been a while. We were trying to figure out when the last one was. I think it might have been Loki last summer, which feels like yesterday whilst feeling like 10 years ago at the same time. Last year has been an absolute whirlwind, and there's been probably about 20 Marvel shows since then, as I'm really trying to figure it out. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask everybody, please comment your thoughts on E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Everything about E.T. It's been out 40 years, so obviously, not being to a spoiler warning, but we'll be discussing this film. We'll be discussing how long it's been out. I might even bring you some of the changes which I discovered today, but please do comment your thoughts. Doesn't mean not. We do reply to comments and hit the subscribe button. If you're a fan of Steven Spielberg, there's a lot more films of his on the way. We are 7 episodes in. There are going to be 34 total, plus a few other things happening towards the end, which is going to be very exciting and terrifying at the same time. So it does mean a lot to get your support. And as always, follow us on our social medias, Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. Links to TeePublic in that description below. Now, we're pre-recording this a few weeks in advance. And I believe at the time of this video coming out, it will be the 10th of May. So we'll be heavy into a new Star Wars month we're doing. But we're not here to talk about Star Wars. Star Wars will be brought up inside of this video, given many reasons. But before we get into that, Neel, I'm going to put you on the spot with a question. I've been doing this to everybody that's jumped on this series so far. Can you remember the first film or early memories of a Steven Spielberg film? Or maybe The Man?
Oh, so this is actually quite a good one. Excuse me. I've got a light of it here. You can't see it, but Jurassic Park. So I think my first film memory is of Jurassic Park, and that was 93, I think it was. So I would have been about 7 or 8 years old, just showing my age at the moment. But I remember it specifically because it terrified me, and being 7 or 8 years old, it would. Primarily the T-Rex scene attacking the car. I spent a lot of time in the toilet, and it was very, very scary. Yeah. It's one of my all-time favorite films now, but back then it scared me a lot.
That's I think there's been a lot of people discussing fear with Spielberg films, and I feel that everyone's gone two ways. You either get a film that's terrified someone, or you get something like E.T., which everyone's like, yeah, we love it and we won't fault it. And it's a fascinating conversation piece. And I think with Spielberg, we kind of say it every week there, but every single person has a different story. And not just the sheer volume of them, it's like the quality of them. And when we've spoke about Star Wars in the past, I think Star Wars is very black and white. 90% of people is just as simple as saw the original trilogy as a kid, saw the prequel trilogy as a kid, and in 10 years' time, it'll be another group saying, I saw the sequel trilogy as a kid. So that works in its favor, but the Spielberg's just been really fun, so I'm glad to get that on this. And as we get into this film, we have the dreaded Imdb plot synopsis, the segment that's become important for the series. I don't read these. We copy and paste them onto the schedule. Sometimes they're 3 paragraphs long. Sometimes they're 1 line long. And E.T. has a little one here. So the official Imdb plot synopsis is: a troubled child summons the courage to help a friendly alien escape Earth and return to his home world. That's a bit nicer than some of the ones we've had. It's a bit more in depth. I wouldn't say Elliot's a completely troubled child, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. But I know you spoke about Jurassic Park. I'd love to ask, do you have any early memories of E.T.? I know we've got some recent stuff with the Prince Charles Cinema, which we'll get into, but I'm just curious to know your background with this as well.
I can't remember ever seeing this film as a child, but I'm guessing that I probably did, because there's bits of it that I kind of remembered as I watched it recently, but yeah, I can't remember ever seeing it as a child. I can only assume it's one of those films that was shown, by parents or whoever else, and then I just can't remember it now. But yeah, I have no real memories of it, which is a bit of a shame because it's a classic. It's a great film, but yeah, I wish I could remember, but I just can't.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm going to sort of follow up in that episode that I saw this when I was, I think, I was studying past it. I think I saw this was like 18, 19. So I was the wrong age to see E.T. I think sometimes with classic films, not saying they hold up in high regard because that's unfair, but a lot of not reactions to the film, but sometimes they can feel very generational, and it's about being the right age at the right moment.
Yeah.
And I certainly think anyone that's under the age of 10 that sees E.T. is probably going to react differently to an 18-year-old. Now, we had a bit of a laugh before the stream because I didn't like it the first time I saw it. I thought this is overrated nonsense. And even a few weeks ago, we did Close Encounters and I saw that film for the very first time. And I was like, yeah, this is insane. This is quality. I think the Grinch grew a bit of a heart this week because I really enjoyed E.T. And I said, you're an absolute prick I was at the age of 18 or 19, like, to be so heartless. And I'm really trying to figure out, like, when I watched it, because I want to know more details of why I reacted the way I did. Like, did Arsenal lose at the early kickoff or something and me watch after? I don't know. But I feel really horrible now because I really enjoyed it rewatching.
As you should. Yeah, I mean, it's a great film.
Yeah.
You should feel horrible, feel bad about yourself. I'm telling you right now. But yeah, I think it's one of these things that I think, as you said, it's generational. And I think that when you watch it as like an 18, 19-year-old, I think most people at that age, you're kind of cynical and you're not sort of like, it's a fairly, I suppose, nice.
The film bro age. You're trying to be a film person, but this sounds really snobby, but it's like, haha, I'm edgy with my slightly edgy opinion on the scene. I think at that point, I'm only 25, but I think even like 7-8 years later, you learn a lot more about life at that age as well, and I think E.T. is very real. Bad alien. Sorry, that sounds ridiculous, isn't it?
It's basically a documentary. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Scientologist, but maybe that is extraterrestrial life. I'd say organisms elsewhere is probably a better term. But moving aside from Scientology and Tom Cruise and John Travolta and other weird people, I'd love to get your thoughts. So you and Charlie saw this at the Prince Charles Cinema recently. Now Charlie's must be on, but she hasn't been feeling well, so obviously wanted to get better soon. And by the time this video comes out, she would have been in our Star Wars ranking, which would have been out last week on May the 4th. So you can tell how up in the air our recording schedule is. But I've got to ask, how was it at cinema? Because I love the Prince Charles Cinema, for those who have never been, but I'd be really curious to see this on the big screen.
It was great. It was really, really good. I think we were just trying to find a film to watch, and this sort of came up. And like I say, Prince Charles Cinema is great because it's very good for like some new films, but mostly classic films. That's mostly what I would go there for. So something like this was great. It was I think a 4K restoration as well. Excuse me. And it was one of these things that, because I couldn't remember seeing it as a child, I don't know if assuming I had seen it, I don't know if I'd seen it in the cinema. So this was great because it felt like I was seeing it for the first time. So a film like this, which I absolutely loved watching, was fantastic to see because I had that opportunity. But it was also amazing to see because it felt like, even though it was made in the 80s, it still felt like it's a film that could have been made now. Not obviously it looks dated in sort of several ways, but in terms of it's just the basic plot of it, it's definitely a film that could be made now, and it's something that's clearly loved by so many people, because anytime anyone mentions it, people always gush about it. People always love talking about it. They love the film itself, and of course the filmmaker. So yeah, it's incredible. And watching it at the Prince Charles Cinema was really good because you got the audience reactions as well, and it wasn't too busy, but you could see that there were plenty of big fans there.
No, excellent. And that's the kind of thing you want. And I think that's the beauty of, as I said, we're doing this free advertising at Prince Charles Cinema, but if you're local to London and you're into film, I'm sure you would have gone by now. But if you've never been, it's just worth going, because in terms of cult cinemas, it is up there. And as you said, they mentioned the 4K. They've got a 4K screen, and now they've been showing a lot of older films and they show films on old film as well. So free advert, do go to the cinema. I've had an annual membership for 3 years now, and yeah, ET would have been amazing to see, because I think we'll talk about how it did at the cinema a little bit later on, but this was at the time the biggest film in the history of cinema, which is crazy to think about. 40 years. I mean, talking 40 years later, we said it's the 40th anniversary. When we were planning this series, there's no correlation. I think the release date was the end of May or the start of June, so the release won't mar up as such. But this is a film that doesn't feel 40 years old. As you said, it could take place at any time in that 40 years. And I think some films are so well contextualized, whereas some aren't. And I think with Spielberg, it always to me comes down to the fact that he's still making incredible films 40, 50 years later after first doing them, which is it's champion in its own right. And obviously, this is a Spielberg retrospective. But if we're going to start really moving to talk about the film now, I'm going to kick off with some behind the scenes stuff now. The first thing I wanted to address in this of anything, something I'm excited to talk about, and I'm sure Charlie would have absolutely loved this part, so she'll be good to miss this. This is the first film in which Kathleen Kennedy is officially a producer for Steven Spielberg. Now, so I'm trying not to make a comment. Kathleen Kennedy is one of the most successful producers in the history of cinema. Some people can choose to say that's not true. I've seen Twitter argue against this for 7 years. That I've seen some people's takes that she got lucky that she worked with Spielberg. I'm sorry, but you don't work on like every Spielberg film from 82 through to, I want to say 2012, when I think Lincoln was the last film, when she obviously got Lucasfilm presidency. You don't get that kind of career if you're not good at your job. And for her role as a producer working with Spielberg and Lucas, I think really is essential for me. And to his journey, this being a retrospective on Steven Spielberg, she's an integral part of the films he's made. And I just wanted to bring that out there because, she's won many Oscars. She has been one of the most successful producers of all time, including some recent films, including some big recent TVs. Hey, you dislike those recent Star Wars films, but apparently it's her fault for those, but it's not her fault that The Mandalorian's great, even though she has the same job for both. So, yeah, not to delve this into Star Wars, but we are doing a Star Wars month across May. So I think that's perfect. We've got to talk about Kathleen Kennedy, but that sounds like I'm just going to rant and mock certain people. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's hard to value a producer so early on, but just their relationship across, his work for what came after is massive.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and this is obviously as you said, it's the first film, but the two of them worked on together up until Lincoln, and that's quite a long partnership. What is that? You said 2012, so that's 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not a bad partnership at all. I mean, the people who are saying that she's lucky are sexist. There's no two ways about it. They wouldn't say that about a man. So that's just nonsense. There's neither here nor there. We know she's successful. We know she knows what she's doing. We all know that. Yeah. But there are people who just want to slag someone off because they're a woman, and that's that. Wow. I think she's done an amazing job. And sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and I think as well, sorry to bring back Star Wars, but they were the same people that were calling for George Lucas to leave, that George Lucas was out of his depth, that George Lucas was at fault for everything. And as soon as he leaves and she comes in, she's now at fault and George Lucas was right, even though they hounded him out. And George Lucas even said that they hounded him out over the years. But no, I'm with you on this. I think to look at her career, again, one of the most successful producers in history, and just say it's luck, that it's not earned. And even a bit behind the scenes on this. So she was working on Raiders of the Lost Ark with Steven Spielberg. Now, I think she was, obviously Frank Marshall was the producer. Now, I don't know whether she was with Frank Marshall at the time. I don't know if they were married at that point, but Spielberg spoke highly of her, saying that she would, I think she was like I think she was like an assistant on set. It wasn't like a main role or anything. And they'd be discussing scenes and she would just interject and say, I disagree. This is how this should be done. And Spielberg said he knew back on Raiders that she was going to be good because it was not just the fact she was contesting them, is that she was bringing forward the ideas to put in its place.
Right.
And that's what you need from a producer. You need someone that can work with the director to increase that, to increase the quality of the film. And I absolutely love the fact that Steven Spielberg, has her on Raiders as an assistant. And then straight away for the follow-up film, she's in a producer role. I think that's guts of him as well to get that in there too.
It is, especially at a time when, it was. I mean, it still is, but not as much. But it was very much male dominated industry, and looking at what she did and what she achieved, it's someone who can be an inspiration to a lot of people. I think Charlie would agree with that. I think she would even say that she would be an inspiration to her. But it's just, it's so frustrating to sort of know that people dislike her so much, even though she's done such amazing work. And as you say, her speaking up and speaking out and saying what she thought of these ideas, and then bring her own ideas. To me, that's a positivity. That's really, really good. To others, it will be like, how dare a woman speak up? But again, that's the world we live in. She's done an amazing job, and she's got one hell of a career.
Yeah, exactly, and actually, they're just some absolute morons. I think that's the politest term I'm going to use. And again, like a lot of them didn't even know that she's worked on some of these films across the decades, which sounds funny. Let's not move on from that. I'd love to keep talking about Kathleen Kennedy, but hey, we've got over 30 years worth of films that she's producing, and so maybe we'll get further chances down the line. Certainly when Frank Marshall produces Jurassic Park, that's going to be a big one down the line. But like I said, we don't just reel off the Wikipedia pages on this. Obviously, when we did the Bond franchise, we just got to refer everyone to James Bond A to Z, which was amazing because they do all the behind the scenes stuff for us. So for this one, I've been sort of reading into his articles and picking the really important tidbits. And obviously, before I get into the concept of the film, I actually want to bring on another person from Raiders. So this was I found this out during the anniversary screening, as we mentioned, that happened last week. So there's some really good articles. Unfortunately, one was on the Daily Mail, so I was looking for other outlets because I didn't want to have to credit that. So just to go and find them somewhere else other than that. But I never knew this. So the scriptwriter Melissa Matheson, who wrote this from Spielberg, she was married to Harrison Ford. So she was dating him during Raiders Lost Ark, and Spielberg pitched E.T. to her to write, and she declines. And apparently, he spoke about his reason. This really surprised me because you wouldn't. I think when you look at these successful films from the past, unless it's clear and obvious, i.e., like a Star Wars, Godfather, the issues on set, it's amazing to see that this concept was declined by the person that had gone to write it. And the story is that Spielberg took Harrison aside again during Raiders of the Lost Ark's production. Pitched to Harrison Ford the plot of E.T. and asked him to have a word with his girlfriend at the time, obviously, who he would later marry. And then she came back to Spielberg saying Harrison Ford was buzzing by the idea, so she actually wanted to. The concept of Harrison Ford being excited by the E.T. is actually incredible in my head.
Yeah.
But I can just picture Harrison Ford playing E.T. now. But an even better thing is that he obviously went to her and she asked Spielberg to sort of pitch it again. And then the second time round, she was wild, and Spielberg took it on the chin, says he thinks maybe he pitched it terribly. He's a bit like George Lucas. I think he's a lot more nervous than people think behind the scenes. No matter what he's done on the screen, I think he's more comfortable behind the lens than in front of it. And I thought that's a lovely little story that, Harrison Ford is partially responsible for why we have E.T.
I would have loved someone to have filmed Harrison Ford getting excited about E.T. because that would be fun. We don't see him that excited or animated these days, and to see him excited about E.T. would be fantastic.
I mean, I don't know if you know much about the behind the scenes of Raiders. The famous he had food poisoning, so he did the whole shooting scene rather than the fight. I'm just picturing like Harrison Ford of food poisoning and Steven Spielberg's like, so I've got this film about an alien coming to Earth with E.T. It's a bit like I know it's a tangent, but do you know the House of Gucci Adam Driver story? I would do anything to make Adam Driver an episode, but they were filming Last Duel, and apparently he was kitted up in his chainmail, and Ridley Scott kept putting the script in front of his face whilst he was in all this heavy armor on Last Duel, and I still don't know how that happened that he was in House of Gucci, but it did, and that's the story we have, which is incredible.
That's good.
But
that's good.
Yeah. So that's a big thing, Raiders, and I'm going to continue with Raiders. I mean, you've got to think about it, people, that these days you can have a 3-4 year gap between films from directors. Spielberg had Raiders out in 81 and this in 82. Like, production back then was, I'm not saying it was different. Obviously, it was to a point, but Steven Spielberg directs films like no others. I mean, he dropped Jurassic Park and Schindler's List on the same calendar year, which to me is still the greatest achievement in cinema history, because how any man can do post-production on, I think he's said you can't, how can you do post on Jurassic Park whilst filming Schindler's List that's going to be a discussion when we get to both of them, but bloody hell. But behind the scenes on Raiders, he was apparently feeling quite lonely out in the deserts in Tunisia. And he was struggling, and that's where the concept came of the ET being, not just sort of isolation, I guess you could say, away from home, but he'd always apparently had an imaginary friend growing up, which obviously did become ET, who, when his parents were going through a divorce, he had this invisible friend, which is kind of quite not sad, but you forget. Obviously, I'm very fortunate. There would have been a lot of children that went through that at that age. And I think it's really hard to say what it's like to go through that when I never did. And I love, this sounds horrible. I love the fact that through that, the world got ET. I know that sounds horrible, and that's not the core of what I'm trying to say. But do you see the logic of where it's coming from?
Yeah, I get it. I think that what you're sort of trying to say, that in a way it's kind of, that's his way of coping with it. That's his way of dealing with it. That's his way of... it's almost his therapy in a way. I think he even said that recently, or someone said like going to cinema is their therapy. I don't know who it was, but yeah, I think it is interesting. Obviously, it's not good what happened with his parents, but it sort of gave birth to something like this, and it's incredible what some people can do in the face of such adversity and such a difficult time, to use that, those difficult moments of that pain to create something so beautiful is incredible. And that's Steven Spielberg through and through. I think that he's someone who will continue to make films for as long as he can, no matter what he's going through. And his passion, not just his passion, but his work ethic doesn't change at all, because with what was it, Ready Steady, oh God, Charlie,
Ready Steady Cook.
Ready Steady Cook, Ready Player One. I think during post-production of that, he made another film, and that was the post. So it just goes to show. It's funny, post-production of one film with the post of the other film. Anyway, but it just goes to show like his. Yes, it did. That's insane. But yeah, it goes to show that he doesn't really, like, he's not going to stop. He's very much, he's a machine when it comes to these films, and like that's his passion. That's what his love is, and that's that can be seen in pretty much every single one of his films.
Yeah, it's really well said, I think, and with this one certainly the core theme, which I think not drew me to it this time round, because that sounds really unfair as well, but the actual relationship with the mother and the absent father is. That would have obviously been something that he went through himself, which is, when that, I think that just adds levity to it. But again, it's that, three siblings coming together and all this kind of stuff. And this is why I felt really sort of, I don't want to say ashamed, but I'm sort of mocking my previous opinion. I'm like, it's like, what cold-hearted must I have been to have come out of ET with those thoughts? Because watching it again now, I was like, this is, I mean, it kind of is a drama in its own right, but what sort of did it for me was, I don't know if you've seen, oh God, I forgot the name. That's really embarrassing. I'm not going to say, have you seen the film? I've forgotten the name of. But there was something similar. Boyhood. I don't know if you saw Boyhood, the Richard Linklater film, the one film across 14 years. And the to me, the film wasn't about the boy. It was the relationship to parents. Yeah. And I think sometimes you can get a really fascinating take from certain films is the other characters other than the leads. And obviously a film called E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, I wouldn't expect to have so much attention towards Mary the mother, and kind of sort of talk about the film a bit more. I mean, we might as well talk about the direction. Steven Spielberg in this, you spoke really well about, cover the story, the adversity from it. It feels like not just one of his most personal films. It feels like you mentioned therapy by people. This film feels very therapeutic. It's the, I think we spoke about it on the other video. I can't remember which one, but we spoke about the innocence of youth. It was Close Encounters, very similar. That you get these scenes of these kids, but this film isn't the innocence of youth. That kids want to meet ET, and the first thing the mother does is take them away from ET. She's scared, and it's all the interesting device about even the short span of going from Raise the Lost Ark to ET, which is actually quite incredible in its own right. With his work, you mentioned the post and Ready Player One, he can just switch up a genre on the spot, and he still makes like an instant classic. And I'd even go to West Side Story, which came out last year. You know, that's a musical. He's never done a musical. And whilst that's in post, he's gone and made The Fabelmans, which is a drama about him growing up, which is going to come out this year. And I'm always amazed at what he's able to do with that lens. And I think E.T. might be the best epitome of his work, of how he tells his stories. And you look at so many films that have come after, and I guess some that come before, where, you know, it's so easy to line up with his characters because not that they're like morally good. That sounds awful, but so many of his characters are just the simplicity of young child meets an alien, wants to take him home. And, you know, as much as I love my Nolans and my Tarantinos, not every film has to be complex to be interesting. You can have a very ordinary story told in a special way, and that's how we get films like E.T.
There's something interesting about a lot of his films, and that is obviously there's a fantastic element to this and Jurassic Park and some other things. A lot of them are quite grounded in a way, and I don't think there's enough sort of respect for. Obviously, there's plenty of respect for Spielberg, but I think there isn't enough respect for that sort of filmmaking, which is inherently just like, it's almost simplistic, but so simple that it is genuinely very clever because of the story that it's telling and the characters that he has in these films. E.T. is kind of a perfect example of, you know, most of us will have a life like that where, you know, we go to school, we're still, you know, when we're still kids, and we'll see some friends, we'll go out and play or go out and do this, do that, but not play with an alien. But, you know, most of it is quite very much ringing true to someone like myself, who as a kid I would go out and play with my friends as some of them do in that film. And that will just speak to a lot of us. And I think that's where his filmmaking is really, really good. Because, you know, of course, it's that came out of the divorce of his parents, but it won't just be just that. It would also be based on his own childhood and things like that. So I think that there needs to be sort of like it's a bit like sort of comedy films. Like, people don't sort of have that much respect for the comedy or the performance when they should, because they're equally difficult to sort of dramatic performances or action performances. And I think that's inherently true with Spielberg films as well.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. Bring up comedy. It is that divide of anyone can make a comedy, but can you make them fun? But can you make them so they stay funny for the years that follow? And it's something like E.T., where so many kids' films. I don't know if you ever had this, where you as you grow older, you got a film you loved as a kid, and you revisit it, and you have this nerve of like, is this going to be good still, or was this always terrible? And you get that moment of dread, and I think E.T. again, because I didn't see it young. It is that demographic of, this is one of those films that's aged, and I think, like anyone, this is a generational film in which parents no doubt will show it to their children, and they'll show it to their children, almost like a Disney animated classic in a way. That I think this will be a film that lasts longer than many others. And I think so much of that comes down to Spielberg. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, which I should have, is that this is the first film done under Amblin Entertainment, which is his production company. I should say this with Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall. And obviously the logo for Amblin is the bicycle with E.T. and the trolley on the moon, which, you know, if you want to talk about the legacy of this film is the logo for Spielberg's company. Now, I know DreamWorks was one he set up as our down the line, but Amblin is his, and it always will be. And I think that's when you know it has that significance to him. And it's just not an out of this world pun, but just that simple premise, the imagery, the kid on the bicycle, you know, flying an alien. It doesn't need to be real to be good or to be grounded.
It's such an iconic image. It's like the Spielberg logo in a way, not just Amblin. It feels like a Spielberg logo. But that, I remember watching it as I did like about a month and a half ago now, and yeah, I was just basically waiting for that bit and enjoying the film as it was, but also just waiting for that iconic moment. There's a few bits like that in there, but that's like the moment from that film that. Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that was a logo for his production company. I didn't even. I kind of slipped my mind just then. But yeah, it's not something that you forget, and it's just like as soon as you see that logo or as soon as you see that image, without anyone saying, where the film, what film it's come from, and there are a few films that you can say that about.
No, absolutely. And talking of the image of E.T., let's actually talk about some of the characters. So, I mean, not that there's much to say on actual E.T. itself, because he is the innocence of he's an alien that's accidentally come to Earth and all that kind of stuff. How do you? It's really I've never thought I'd ever in my life delve into E.T. as a character. I'm not going to say he's layered and nuanced and that kind of stuff we've been able to say in other films, but the simplicity of an alien coming to Earth to befriend a kid. I love E.T. I don't know why he's always reminded me of Wally. Maybe Wally's probably based off E.T., maybe in just a robotic version. But it's the eyes, the face, the fact it's like a giant dog poo. I've just always loved the design of him. And I don't know why. And even years before I saw it, he kind of reminds me of my dogs that we used to have. So I don't know if I have those connections to it as well. And there's something special about it. And is it because he's not a green alien? Which would have been the worst possible thing, having and I know he did that in Close Encounters, but if the design doesn't work, I don't think the film can work, but it does work, and it works so well.
They had him sort of the size and height of a child, so they kind of made him fairly innocent and sort of approachable in that sort of way. But he's very much a fish out of water, because he's learning our ways, learning about food and technology around us, and about people and what have you, because he's obviously not familiar with that. And it would be very much the same if we went to his planet. So it's very much something that we've seen loads of times since then. It's a trope that's used loads of fish out of water, and when it works really well, and it works so well because he's not just innocent and curious. He's like adorable with it as well, because he's small and he's quite funny with it. And like, this film is much funnier than I was expecting, because everyone talks about how emotional they get with it, and I kind of forgot. Or obviously I can't remember when I first saw it, but when I saw it this time, it was really funny, and he's great. He's a great character. He's not layered, but I suppose we don't get enough time with him. And I, for one, am glad that we didn't see a sequel, because I think apparently there were people wanting it, and I don't understand why. It's perfect as it is. But yeah, he's great.
They're in Star Wars. They're in Star Wars. They're in the Phantom Menace. In that politics scene, we get the ET species in the corner, which is one of the greatest references George Lucas did. And Yoda's in this. So again, I love the fact that Spielberg and Lucas, not just friends, that they're just massive. Like in the era, I'm going to really importantly say it's not to diss Marvel, but in the era where Easter eggs were conceptually Easter eggs, when it wasn't fashionable to scan every scene. I know Star Wars did that anyway, but like the ET species was always really cool, and like Yoda in a way, you don't need to know about them. Yes, we've got Grogu. Maybe they'll do Baby ET next. I don't know, but it's kind of what he said. It's the design of the kid, and he's very funny. When I don't know what scene makes off the most, but I love the whole Halloween scene, because it's actually quite tense, and that's what's very smart. But when he falls over with the camera, and I think it's those moments that were making me laugh, and it was just like, obviously, you can have the whole snidey, like, I hate cinema sins, but the whole, like, how does the mother not know that's not her daughter? Like, I don't care about stuff like that. It's a really funny, it's the way he walks as well. He, like, podges side to side, and I just think everything works about him. Yeah, and I think Spielberg, if this is this imaginary friend he had, maybe he had that as a kid where the friend didn't speak or was funny, but it's just, even in the bedroom, you get its face hiding amongst all the dolls as well, and his eyelids.
That was great.
I just thought it's really funny, and I never realized, again, like, I feel really angry with how probably wasn't as younger, but like it's so like he's just really funny character. Like I'd chill with ET. Like not that you can have him on the beers or anything, but you'd invite him around for a film night, put him on the sofa,
Oh yeah,
watch a film. He'd probably have a good time as well. And I just not wanted more of this and still want a sequel, but there is not a wasted moment with him. And I think what's beautiful I read is that one of Spielberg's techniques for this, he shot it in chronological order, which we know is very rare for film. But he wanted the young actors to have the experience of go with him whilst he's new. And for when you get to the ending or the dramatic scenes, you do get the emotion that they were saying goodbye to E.T. as well. Which is actually that's quite sad when I think about that, because imagine being a little kid that you get to spend all that time with this great creature and it's done after a few weeks. Like it's very geniusly done in terms of scheduling and a smart way to get the performance out of the young kids. But also, like, it kind of makes me want to pet ET as well.
I don't know if I want to pet ET, but yeah, I'd be friends with him. Yeah, he just seems like a lot of fun, and there's a great bit where they dress him up. It's like a little like a girl, or I don't know. There's like he has a dress or like some like hat on and what have you. It's just
Imagine
it's
Miss
so
Nesbit
good.
from Buzz Lightyear.
Exactly. That's exactly where they got it from. But yeah, he's so good, and yeah, that visual gag of him just in that sort of crowd of soft toys in the like the sort of like wardrobe or toy room or whatever it is. Oh, it's fantastic! It's so well done.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's the moments of comedy and lightheartedness that you need in a film, because this is primarily a kids film. It will function for adults as it has for us, but there'll be kids that probably grow up with this and they say, hold on, this is really good as they get older. And we might as well touch on what some of the kids are. I mean, we've got the main three. We've got Elliot, Michael, and Gertie. Now, normally, I'm going to sound horrible, young actors can be a struggle. Now, not saying it's me personally, I think certainly from what the history will tell you and however you want to read into it, American film sets more so than British film sets have very different treatment of young actors. Obviously, I'm not going to get into issues that obviously some have or whatnot, but as you look at the Harry Potter cast over here, they were so well looked after. They're the ones that have come out right, not the author. I won't get into that, but Elliot is one of the times where I felt this is a fantastic young actor. And when I was reading it, Spielberg was very conscious of having young actors, having on the board, as I said, shooting them in sequential order rather than random scenes here and there. You think Spielberg's kind of, he does look after them. And at the end of the day, this is what businesses kind of see in the industry, which is always the problem. They're children. Like, yes, they're acting, but they're not professionals in their 20s. They're like 3, 7, and probably like 14. They're kids. And they need to be not treated just as kids, but you can't train them into a circus act on the spot. And I think maybe it's unfair to sort of group the three of them together, but certainly Elliot, I think, is one of the best young performances in many films.
Oh yeah, he's given a lot to do. Obviously, the others are very, very good at supporting actors, but he's given a lot of emotional weight to lift, and he does it incredibly well. Like the talent of some young actors like that are like it's phenomenal. He's very, very good, especially sort of towards the end, and there are certain moments he really has to pull out some really tough emotional moments or what have you. But it does it very, very well. I think it shows how good someone can be even in a film like this. Like he doesn't have to be opposite a human, or he doesn't have to be opposite anything that's particularly real. Even as something like an alien film can have such emotional depth if it's written well and you've got the right performers, which is absolutely did. Yeah, he was really, really good.
Yeah, and I think that's what you kind of want from it as well. And you got to think with him as well. He's the one partnering with the not just an alien, but an animatronic on set as well, which obviously what we should have said also. Not that they captured a real alien and made him act. That would be an experience. It's probably what they do. But yeah, just go for this. I'll tell you, I really enjoyed Michael, the older brother. The trope of the older brothers are always the bullies or the oldest sibling in these kind of films. You didn't get that he was a part of them, and I think what worked in this film's favor, which again is that real life side of it. It is the divorce that you get moments where Elliot will say something to the mother, which is something shouldn't be said, but those three children have obviously all not distance, but they're obviously going through their own struggles within their family relationship, and I think it's so easy for films to get that sort of angle wrong as well. But they absolutely deliver, and I think he's very. I think because he's the sort of, again, I guess the supporting act of the kids, you forget how sort of integral he is to it. But he's got some great moments of ET as well, especially the whole Halloween stuff. When it's you got the whole knife thing and it's him telling ET to sort of stay down and stuff. I thought it was really funny, and again, like Drew Barrymore, like how young she was in this as well, very well done. And again, I think is Steven Spielberg like her godfather, or I feel there's
something like that,
family collection of some kind. But I think I think all the kids are great in this, and I very rarely say that in kids films.
Yeah, I think you're right about the older brother sort of trope being the bully and whatever. And there is a bit of like sort of tension or whatever, like standard brother stuff, but it's not in the typical way that you seem to see so much of since then. They're very much on the same side, and even his mates as well, like towards the end, they all sort of help out as much as they can, and they're clearly all like they're all like part of one team, and it could be very easy for for the kids not to sort of help each other out or what have you, but they did it really, really well. And Drew Barrymore was great in it. She was very funny, but she also had some emotional moments as well. Like I think especially towards the end. She's obviously carried on proving herself since then, but like in that film, I don't know if that was her first film or not. Obviously, it would have been one of her first films, it shows that when you get the right talent, it can go really far. And this has catapulted her into huge success since then.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I saw him was Charlie's Angels, so I was like, I think I saw that. Well, I didn't even there's two of them. I think we saw that really young. I was like 6 or 7. Again, like my sisters are into it, and I grew up. I was like, oh my god, like that's the one from Charlie's Angels in ET. Very different, obviously, characters there and then.
Yes.
But no, I think they're great, and massive props goes to the role of Mary, played by Dee Wallace, the mother in this. I thought she was fantastic, and when you're taking the role, and it doesn't need to develop it's not how boring it would be to open up with like a whole court thing, or you've got custody of your kids and there's no dad, but everything you learn about the divorce, because I bet they don't even see the words divorce outright, because they always say the dad's in Mexico, don't they? You'd learn so much, and it's, I guess, not even the instance of kids. It's like when you have a kid with attitude that wants to upset his mother, he can, and he does it. And I found that to be really interesting. The whole mother relationship is there through the issues that the kids have, rather than the mum telling them, or she's struggling. And even in those early scenes, the looks of Drew Barrymore as well as the older brother, all those things, it sets up her story arc, and I think she's one of the most interesting characters in the film. I think she's incredible, and it's that Spielberg thing. He can get great performances out of anyone.
I agree, and I think that's there are times when you see films and they've got like loads of people in it, and they feel they've all got to do something or what have you, or they've got to feel the filmmaker feels as if they've got to do a lot. And this sort of shows that you don't have to give someone a lot to get a lot out of them, because obviously the mum is not one of the main characters she's supporting, but we still get enough out of that character and what she's been through and what she's still going through, what she has to deal with now, in a very I think a few early scenes. You kind of you learn, as you say, we've learned enough about the divorce to know that something is going on. But they don't outright say it, but it's fairly obvious. It shows how good that sort of writing was for every single character, or primary character, like the family and NET. It's just they've balanced it really well. They've made it, and ET's and Elliot's story, whilst making sure everyone else has enough to do. It doesn't have to be too much, but they've all got enough to do to show that the emotional weight of the story and all that they're carrying with them.
Yeah, and I think there's a really well said point with that, and it's how integral she is to that, and you got to balance it, and how also when they're making this film, you're catering it to kids still. Kids aren't going to know what terminology of that does mean, and it's about getting the balance in. And I think one thing that's a big part of House of Mouse, it's about sort of having a really weird segment, is John Williams. Every week we get to it, the soundtrack section where we just go on about how incredible John Williams is, which is the way it will be. I won't have anything else said. Goes for E.T. This is his 4th Oscar win out of 5, which is incredible. Now, the fact that he'd won, I think 3 in the space, 5 or 6 years, obviously Star Wars, Jaws, and this. I think Schindler's List was the other one. And did you Fiddler on the Roof? I think it was something in the early 70s. But it's all about winning stuff. But winning John Williams, and you've had the second most Oscar nominations after Walt Disney, that is still an insane statistic. And again, he's in the 90s now, and he's still performing concerts recently, which has been on the news. The score to this film, I think, is one of his best. I mean, and that's very easy to say about so many of his scores. I think if you're going to have a tier list with one of John Williams' scores, E.T. sits in that top tier. There's a reason he won the Oscar, but he is able to capture. I hate the term "capture the magic" because it's used so much. But if you were going to ever apply it to something, how can you have the relationship of a child befriending this alien? You need John Williams to do it, and I think you get through the sad scenes through to the great scenes, and where it ends up to the scene of the bicycle. He is on board from the first minute, and kind of not something horrible to say John Williams like E.T., but Williams and Spielberg are a duo to me. Obviously, yes, they've both done films without each other, but it's their relationship that I find so important. And there's just something about E.T. where I feel like, not that they've clicked because they've already clicked, but I think this kind of score is the best kind of John Williams score. It's really hard to describe. You know how this one that Harry Potter, right? It's the instruments used. Jaws works so well from being a horror mechanism and those notes. Obviously, Star Wars is the big brass triumphant, but there's something about E.T. that's majestical, and John Williams can do that. And I think when Spielberg's doing it as well, when they sort of come in together, it just creates this masterpiece. I know I've waffled a lot about the soundtrack, but does that sound weird?
No, I kind of get what you mean. So to me, it was kind of a mix of, I suppose there had to be a sci-fi element in there, but there also had to be a sort of a fun, family-friendly element, but also an adventure element, and he kind of ticks all of and an emotional element, and he ticks all of those boxes throughout the film. And that, obviously the music that's played when E.T. leaves, spoiler, and the music that's played when they fly over in the bikes is it's so iconic, and you can't forget what it sounds like. And that's obviously a testament to John Williams knowing exactly what he's doing. But he balances all of those components so well that sort of the type of scene that it is without even watching it. You can probably close your eyes and you can kind of tell from his music. It's just, he's absolutely one of the best, if not the best.
And I think that's it. And it's about this balance in the scores. And some of this I was reading, Spielberg speaking about John Williams with this. He actually edited the bike chase around John Williams' score, which is some people might think that's normal, but that's never the case normally. Is that the film's playing and the composer composes around it, but Spielberg adjusted the edit for the John Williams theme, which I think that just goes to show, for the climax of a film, he's editing it around a composer, shows the quality of the composer. And he's spoken into his eyes saying that he loved every single theme that John Williams played to him, and he found a way to incorporate all of them into the film, which is also very rare. I think there's a real I don't want to say soundtracks are underappreciated. I think if you're a lover of film, you really you tend to know the composers and whatnot. But I think when it's to the general audience, which is a massive thing, when I tell someone listen to soundtracks, I think that's weird, and it kind of is. I love it. Nothing better than bombing on the motorway to a good classic car chase sequence or something. I'm not going to go on a bike ride to ETV because I can't fly. I just think that they don't realize how many hours and hours and hours of audio that these composers have to come up with, and they probably have songs that they're writing which don't work when they start playing, and there's so many things. And for a director to say, I'm going to use every single theme, is incredible. And just to bring up John Williams again, because this is an official Star Wars month, but the fact he's 90 years old and he's doing the main theme for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's come out because he told Natalie Holt, he asked her permission, which is insane. Imagine John Williams asking anyone's permission to compose anything related to Star Wars, which is also a testament to his respect of a composer. I'm going to add to, and he said, I got to do a Star Wars theme for everyone except Obi-Wan Kenobi. And that hit me in the feels, because it's true. But again, like Natalie Holt, I think did an amazing job of Loki. This probably means a lot to her that she's been able to work with John Williams, and I'm excited for that film to come out. But again, he's 90 years old. He's doing concerts still. He's composing a new Indiana Jones film, which is incredible. Frank Marshall did a tweet this week. He was at the ET event, and I think he said that he's excited to listen to John Williams scoring. So maybe that's sooner than we think. I don't know, but the absolute legend will. We'll come back to him next week. I don't think he did the Twilight Zone. I'll need to double check my notes. But he will come back to this Spielberg retrospective as he always does. But we're going to get into a bit of a numbers, not to make it boring, but we always talk about the impact of these films, the legacy of these films. Now, we spoke so much about E.T. Celebrating its 40th anniversary, being one of the biggest films ever. I mentioned this was a record-breaking film. This became the highest-grossing film in history. Now, that's one thing to say, but to me, the most important thing about this is what film did it have to beat to get it? It beat Star Wars. And I still struggle with the concept in my head. And I don't mean this is disrespect to E.T., but when you look at those films that have been at the trajectory of those, you had Jaws, you had Star Wars. To take out E.T. for a moment, Jurassic Park came after. Then it was Titanic. Then it was Avatar. Then it was Avengers. And now through to some of the reasons it's gone back to being Avatar. You don't expect E.T., the family film about the alien friend, to compete with, obviously, not just the fact they are all IPs, but the Titanic. That's an event, right? In a polite term. You just don't expect E.T. to have that trajectory of highest grossing film ever. But that's an incredible statement to say. And it kept the record until Spielberg beat it again with Jurassic Park, which is also incredible in its own right. I don't even knew much of that, but again, box office stuff, modern, it's had multiple re-releases as they will do. And now it's at $793 million worldwide, but did you know it beat Star Wars? Because you seemed a bit shocked then. And
No, I didn't know that.
Impressive though, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. I'm struggling with words. I think it's interesting. So it's a great film, so fantastic. That is great news. I love Star Wars, but I'm not bothered by a great film like this, knocking it off the top spot. I mean, well done, because it's E.T. is fantastic and damn right it should be appreciated. So, and it just goes to show how good a filmmaker Spielberg is, because he can knock something like Star Wars off the top spot and then knock himself off, 11-ish years later, and that's incredible. But also that a family-friendly film can be at the top spot, because as you say, now it's going to be something like, Avengers or Avatar or something like that, all in the top 10 will be very much something that's part of a franchise. It's not something that's just a standalone film. Whereas this did it, and that's fantastic. But I think that's also sort of maybe a testament of family films back then. I think they were perhaps bigger than they are now, but I think that when you look at the films of the 80s, there's so many that you could watch as a child, but you can also watch now that you can still appreciate. But I don't feel that's sort of happening now. But yeah, I'm glad that it did. That it's fantastic. I did have another point and I've completely forgotten it, but oh well. But yeah, that's really good.
No, it becomes actually to bring up, because I love the sort of, I always get really sad with box office numbers, the amount of spam texts I send to people about opening weekends. It's always been really fun to follow for me. And again, as you said, it's not an IP. Avatar was an original film, and it went on to become Avatar 2, 3, 4, 5. Star Wars became obviously, Star Wars. They don't stop. Obviously, you can't get over Titanic, but E.T. the family film, and as you said, there's no sequel. I know there was like a weird Sky advert a few years ago. That's where they brought Elliot back. Don't know the context of it, if it was like unofficial or if it was like a weird Super Bowl thing, but yeah.
Even even though Star Wars and Avatar were not initially they were standalone films. I mean, technically Avatar still is. We haven't seen the second one, but we know it's coming. They were huge films for when they were made, and you know, E.T. comparatively is smaller. You know, it takes place in a small town. It's a small story about a small lady and a small family, and that's it. That's basically what it is. It's not like it's not in a galaxy far, far away. It's not about sort of weird blue aliens who do weird stuff with their tails. Yeah, that. And it's you know it's sort of simple filmmaking, as I said before. Simple but really good filmmaking that's made it to the top, and yeah, that's something to be celebrated. I don't think that's going to happen again.
No, I'm glad you brought it because I've just gone to the box office and its budget was 10.7 mil. For comparison, Star Wars was 11 million, and that was 5 years before it. So you know, you got to think that's still very cheap, and especially in the 80s, the evolution of blockbuster, that's very low for me in terms of what it would go on to do again to beat Star Wars. And you know, unlike Star Wars, you know, George Lucas always conceived Star Wars as serial films. There would be a franchise to a point. Obviously, Avatar, I'm not going to lie, I've never cared enough to know if 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was in the pipeline all along. Maybe we'll find out this December. They keep telling us it's coming out. That's the one film I'll never believe until I see it. And as well, we'll talk some Oscars really quickly. Again, Spielberg, the one thing films have always had is a backtrack of Oscars very early on. 9 nominations, winning 4, including soundtrack, sound, effects, and effects editing. The fact there's an Oscar for effects editing is really annoying me as I've delved further back. I'm glad we just have visual effects now because editing is very different. But there was the film that won Best Film that year was Gandhi, and the director of Gandhi said they didn't deserve to win Best Film. E.T. did. Now that's humbling. Nice. I don't know, but I've not seen that since I was at school, so I can't. I'm not gonna. You can't compare Gandhi to E.T. anyway. That's stupid. But the fact he would say that after winning Best Film is remarkable. And yeah, E.T. just. I don't think has any of the. I don't think a film that's ever been the highest grossing of all time has ever won Best Film that same year. It's probably a bit of an anti. We'll make sure it doesn't happen type thing.
It's that thing with like genre films that they never sort of do that well at Oscars at the very least. It's like for the most part, like Black Panther was nominated for Best Film, and I know that obviously
that's like an equivalent of winning to me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Lord of the Rings do well, but like there are few exceptions. Like you don't really see very many like sci-fi, horror, comic book films or what have you in that. It's usually the dramatic ones or whatever. But yeah, it is a shame that we don't see that more often. Maybe that might change, but I doubt it.
Hopefully, Dune Part 2 will sweep it all. We hope. I think everyone's so worked up on the Lord of the Rings got it because it was a pat on the back for doing them. I think Dune Part 2 is going to get the same, where it's like, you did Dune Part 1 and 2, and now you'll get your awards because you can get 10 nominations in every category except Best Director for Denis Villeneuve, which makes no sense. I'm still not over, as you can tell. Yeah. He should have won, but he'll win. He'll get his chance. But talking E.T., let's we spoke about a few scenes, but do you have a favorite scene or no? I mean, it's hard to look past the bike scene. I think for anybody.
The bike scene's really good.
It's the accumulation of where the film's been. Like it all leads up to the bike moment, and it delivers for me.
Yeah, I think that there are sort of moments when I called E.T. like a fish out of water. There are moments like that. Sort of, I think this is shortly after Elliot's discovered him. And he's like in the house and he's kind of looking around and he's like drinking beer and he's just basically just getting off his face on beer. And it's like, you're a tiny little alien. You're going to be so drunk soon. But it's stuff like that, which is really funny because it's just, it's one of those things where if we were in that position and we were discovering things for the first time, it'd be quite funny to other people. So I think things like that.
Yeah, and the Halloween scene as well. Like, I think when he sees the Yoda and he like looks at it, doesn't
Oh
he?
yeah.
The kid in the Yoda mask, and
Oh my god, yeah.
it's just the whole Halloween scene's great, and it's it's very funny. I don't think there's not a bad scene in it. And one thing I will say, actually, I don't even know about the whole walkie-talkie thing. I'm not going to talk about director's cuts again, but the scene when they're about to fly and they've all got the shotguns out. There was a special edition in 2002 when they replaced the guns with walkie-talkies. And I'm pretty sure Spielberg immediately regretted doing it, and then he reverted back to saying everyone should just go and watch the original version. And obviously that's not been on the Blu-rays and the 4Ks and everything since. So that was, I'm not going to blame George Lucas, but that I could imagine a George Lucas like, hey, what about they had walkie-talkies, not guns?
I mean, I don't blame him, but just look what he did with. He keeps like tinkering with Star Wars constantly. It's like, leave it alone. It's fine.
I know, that's what makes it funny though. Like, it's just those who just keep changing their films, and I think Spielberg's now said that he disagrees with changing his own films, which at least the message finally got to him. But if we're going to head up final thoughts, because it's been an amazing hour discussion. Honestly, this has been a lot longer than I thought it would be. As I've kind of alluded to, I had a really fun time revisiting ET. I think because I didn't like it to begin with, I was always sort of nervous about watching it, but I thought this would be quick and done. But it just reverts back to that point that like Spielberg is the master of his craft, and ET's not like his baby, but to go from Raiders to ET in the space of a week, well, not a week, well, a week for us, a year in cinematic terms. I was seeing what he can do with that camera, what stories he can tell, and I honestly thought ET is probably. I'm going to happily take out anything and say this is probably one of the best family films ever made.
I was just about to say the same thing. Yeah, this is genuinely one of the best family films that you could watch, and it hasn't really aged at all. Like, obviously, some of the tech in it was like it dates it, but it's not really a big deal. But the fundamentals of the story haven't aged at all. It's a wonderful story, well told and well written, and with like some tremendous actors in it as well. It's so much better than I thought it was going to be, because I couldn't remember it when I saw it as a child, and seeing it again, like I said, about a month and a half ago, I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun, really funny, and yeah, it's a film that, unlike a lot of the sort of big blockbuster films that are doing so well at the moment, it will stand the test of time, and it has stood the test of time, and we're still talking about it, 40 years later. And the fact that there's events for a 40th anniversary going on at the moment says a lot. And yeah, it will always be, I think, in some people's top 10, and damn right.
Very, very well said, and I can't say any better than that. So that's the best way to round out this video. Neel, it's been absolute delight getting you on. Obviously, we'll have you on for Jurassic Park 100%. I know that, and a few others that we've got in the pipeline. But if you have seen this, please comment your thoughts on ET. I'm really intrigued to see what people think. Again, I think everyone of different ages is going to have different reactions towards this film, dependent when you saw it. So please do comment them below if you've changed your mind on it. We had a really great comment on Jaws about someone that we got there, not to publicly say it, but we had a bit of a therapy about fear of sharks, and we had someone in the comments joining us on that. So if, like me, you once hated ET and it's grown on you, please comment it, because I took that humbling fair and square. And of course, hit the subscribe button. There's a lot more stuff coming on the way. There's a lot more. Not Indiana Jones. There is Indiana Jones. I'm getting mixed up. That's a couple of films away. There's obviously more Steven Spielberg coming every single Tuesday, 8 p.m. GMT, BST, whatever time zone we'll be in by the time the series finishes. Next up is The Twilight Zone, the movie. Now, I've never seen this series. I've never seen the film. I know nothing about it, except that Jordan Peele did a new version of it, or produced a new version of it a year or two ago. So me and Tate will be doing that on Tuesday, the 17th of May. That is next in the Steven Spielberg Retrospective. And as we always do, we actually have a very short schedule of all the other Steven Spielberg films, which we will be bringing up on the screen any moment now. What we have next is not just The Twilight Zone, as I said. Coming up, we have Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That is going to be coming on the 24th of May. We have The Color Purple coming on Tuesday, the 31st of May. That's going to round out the month. And then we have Empire of the Sun, 7th of June. That film I've never seen that stars a very young Christian Bale, which I'm excited to see because I love Christian Bale. And and they're the ones coming next from the Steven Spielberg Retrospective. We've got a lot of other videos happening on the channel. So I keep saying it's Star Wars month. This is being pre-recorded before Star Wars month has begun. We will have a Star Wars ranking on the channel, where we've had a lot of people sending in top 10s. We've been going through them, similar to how we did Marvel and Bonds. Please do have a look at that. You might be wondering, why are you hyping up Star Wars for? It's May. Well, yes, May is the time to hype Star Wars. Of course, Ewan McGregor is coming back this month to play Obi-Wan Kenobi. May the 27th, and we're dedicating a whole month of build-up to that. And the next video you can see of ours for this is Reboots from Hell. Now, Monday the 16th of May, not only are Arsenal playing Newcastle at 8 p.m., there's a pre-recording due to that reason. Our 20th anniversary. What way to butcher the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones? We're going to have a Reboots from Hell episode airing on that evening. Obviously, as I said, it's pre-recorded for blatant reasons why. Carl, who is a Newcastle fan in the comments, will no doubt have seen that too. That's the series where we recast and reboot a film. We keep the same story, the same everything. We just change up the switch of the cast. And why not celebrate the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones on the day with a fun video? And by the time this video is up, we'll have had a video up this week already for The Phantom Menace. Obviously, Attack of the Clones is next. And then the week after that is going to be Revenge of the Sith as we build up Kenobi predictions, Kenobi videos, Star Wars Celebration content. A lot of stuff happening on the channel. It's going to be a mega month. And on top of that, we'll have videos up in the week beforehand talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Moon Knight in a spoiler discussion. We've got Top Gun and Top Gun 2 at some point this month. May's insane. April was very quiet because we were too busy planning everything for May, but a lot of stuff on the way. And as I'm always going to say, hit the subscribe button, follow us on social media. It is the best place to find out about these videos. It's going to stop me talking about them for 5 minutes into every other video. The hype for Kenobi is here. It might have been apparent during this, but obviously, we'll be able to talk about Kathleen Kennedy in the correct ways as well on that series. So looking forward to that, but follow us on social media, Twitter at @cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. Links to public in the description below. Neel, it's been a pleasure to get you on for this video. As I said, we'll get you on for Jurassic Park and a lot more. Obviously, Charlie, we hope gets well soon. She will be on the ranking video, which just took place previously, not to confuse any more viewers, but we will continue to do so. So thank you all for watching. Take care and join us on the next one.
Bye.